the most important. That. I'm starting. Yes. Hopefully, then Mike will give the we can take a bio. How we run it, I saw in the program.
Because her presentation is 5 minutes. Okay, so if the noise is here, if the noise is here, I don't see that presentation.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Good to see you all this morning. It's been such a long time before we had a CEO breakfast. So I'm really delighted to see all of you here this morning. My name is Anne Awori. I'm the General Manager of the American Chamber of Commerce. We are excited to host you this morning. We would like to start the meeting. Thank you once again for coming, and thank you to RippleNami, Jay, and your team. Thank you so much for accepting to sponsor this CEO breakfast today. By the way, RippleNami is one of our newest members. They are Vice President Club member, but now you're not the newest anymore because just a few days ago, we got a new member called Future Energy Partners. So we are welcome, Future Energy Partners. Where are you? There he is, Gerald. Thank you. They're based in London, but Gerald is their person here in country. So we would like to recognize the presence of a few people here. Our board, you're most welcome. Our immediate past president, Captain Agawal, thank you for joining us. Our own president, Mike Davis. We have Simon Kaheru, a board member, Haruna Nyanzi, and Meg, who is our vice president. You're most welcome. There are people who have joined us online. We haven't forgotten you. Thank you so much for logging in. Please make sure you keep your mics on mute so that we can have a seamless discussion this morning, because the topic of discussion this morning is really pertinent to all of us. It speaks to our hearts because we all pay taxes. And so we are going to be looking at rental income taxation, traceability, transparency, and trust. We shall have RippleNami, of course, take us through what they do in Uganda so that we can understand more of this. That's why we are really delighted that they accepted to host this event, because it's really timely. Before we invite RippleNami, I would like to invite our president, Mike Davis, to give us a few remarks. And then Jay, you will be the next after Mike to give us your presentation.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, everybody. Again, thank you, RippleNami, Jay, everybody for joining us today. Thank you for our panelists. It's very rare that we have the URA in the house. A couple ground rules, because we've had some past fun with URA. Please restrict questions from the audience. If you do have questions, write them down and give them to Anne. We want to show respect for our government partners and make sure that they feel comfortable talking to us and having a conversation with us. So that goes to same with the KCCA. We all know that there are square-shaped potholes now in the country, and hopefully we won't mention that beyond that. So one of the things I wanted to look at is rental tax impacts most of us through our rental rates, if we're renting or if we're property owners. A couple of things, key facts here. Rental tax went down in 2018-19 to 2019-2020 by almost 15 billion shillings. And one of the things that we need as a country is obviously more tax rates. Why did it go down? How do we going to increase that? One of the other things we look at is the number of companies in Uganda. I don't know if anybody realizes, but there's only 121,000 registered TIN numbers to companies in Uganda. That means there's only 121,000 companies in Uganda, according to the tax authority. Obviously, there's a lot more, especially in the downtown market, informal market. Of these, only 95,000 paid taxes in 2018-2019. That's an effective 15%, or that's an effective rate of about 70-some%. Of that, 82% of those were under 50 million shillings in revenue. Okay, so the big boys only account for, the people in this room account for probably a large chunk of the taxpayers. So how do we increase that taxpayer base here? How do we start hitting the other ones? I know URA is in my office pretty much, or one of our offices every week, probably about 4 days a week. Yeah, collecting taxes, asking for more money, continuing to ask for more money. But how do we help them as members, as business people here, to collect more money across the board, not just within the same group of people? Another thing too that we look at is individual taxpayers. So one of the key things that I'd like to look at today is what's the difference between an individual taxpayer and a corporate taxpayer? How does that affect rental rates? I don't know if you know this, the Americans, we get our TIN number at birth. Okay, how do we change that here? You have to apply for a TIN number here. Right now, there's 1.5 million TINs, but there's 44 million people in Uganda. So there's a large gap of taxpayer compliance there, just applying for a TIN. How do we help you make it easier? And I think RippleNami coming in and assisting with that data integration process. I think Jay used the words data democratization. How do we get data and information to the people that should be paying across the board? How do we encourage people to get TIN numbers? How do we change the way society works to give a TIN number at birth? So I'd like to see that, especially with the growth of the population here. We're hitting what, 3% growth? The median age of Ugandans is 16 years old. So there's going to be more and more taxpayers. How do we change the paradigm to get taxpayers to continue to widen the base? And I'm not saying tax everybody across the board, just keep taxing, taxing, taxing. Obviously, the country needs money, but how do we get more compliance? How do we get people on board? And I think what RippleNami is doing, along with URA and with the help of Nathan Associates and USAID, helping get widening that tax base so that they're not pressuring the top companies over and over and over again. I know our friends at Coca-Cola. I mean, I think you guys have a URA person sitting on site. 17 URA people sitting on site at Coca-Cola. So yeah, we get. So, but those are the kinds of things that we want to see change. How do we work with that? How do we make it easier? How do we, as private sector, encourage change? Applying for a TIN number, paying your taxes. I mean, most people don't know that you have to have an Excel. You have to have Microsoft Excel to pay your taxes. How do we help URA change that? How do we encourage change and make it easier for everybody? My American taxes that I pay took me about 20 minutes for the year. How do we replicate that system here? My taxes for here, I had to outsource because I can't figure it out. So how do we help as private sector, as the American Chamber, work with groups like RippleNami to do this and help URA have more tax compliance? So I think that's what I have to say, Jay. I'll pass it on to you. Thank you, guys.
There's some slides here. Hello, all. I have to put my glasses on. It's that age that I am at now, the 50 plus. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having us, hosting us. We're excited to be part of the American Chamber of Commerce. A little bit about what we're doing here. We started in October after we could get back in the country after COVID. We are vaccinated, most of us, we hope. So we're working very closely with URA, and the problem we're trying to solve is tax compliance. It's not that there's needs to increase taxes. It's just let's get visibility as to what kind of compliance we need. And if we look at Uganda, right, it's over 40 million people. It's imperative for everyone to pay their taxes. We are from the land of America, the land of taxation. We hate paying taxes, but we do it as an obligation because you have to grow your middle income. That's the only way you become a sovereign nation and get off debt. We're just on a circle. So we're trying to stop the insanity. We had to have a system that is traceable, that is transparent, that is secure and compliant. Very simple. So we're using the latest and greatest of technologies that are out there right now. And our whole goal is to help URA with the visibility they need to increase tax revenue so it can then go into the infrastructure, the healthcare, the education, bring jobs to people, bring up the middle income. Make sense? Yes, yes, we're the technology piece. And I'm going to tell you exactly what we're doing. Next slide, please. So the problem we're trying to solve for, there's probably about, I think, 10 MDAs. I may be wrong. There may be some more now. Everybody has a data silo, and they have a little bit of something to do with a land or a property or a person. And we're pulling that all together to break down these data silos, because data is power. That's the new currency out there. And our name, RippleNami, is a ripple of data turns to a tsunami of information, right? Data on an Excel spreadsheet is meaningless. If I can see it in a dashboard, if I can have it blinking at me like problem, 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 I can solve for something. So we're breaking down these existing data silos, everything from the Minister of Land to KCCA to URA to Water and Sewage to UCC to NERA to NETA. Everybody's data regarding a piece of property is pulled together. Right now, I don't know if the number's right, but when we first calculated, only about 8% of rental income tax was collected. 8%. I think that was 2 years ago. Is Brenda here? I haven't seen Brenda, but she can confirm that. That's a small number, 8%. And this is a big investment. And what Uganda wants to do is bring in more foreign investors. You want to bring transparency to the real estate market, because me as an American coming in, if I don't know what the value is of a property, if I don't know if you own it, that you're selling it to me, there's a problem. Getting a mortgage, pretty expensive here. In America, $1 million loan goes for 3% mortgage rates. That's a high. We can go down to 2%, but that's not the case here because there's not a clear cut case of here's a property, here's the valuation, here's what it's worth, here's its history, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what the problem is we're trying to solve. Next slide, please. Do we have the next slide up? Yes. Okay, so let's see what the solution is. So we have developed, and in conjunction with URA, what's called the Rental Tax Compliance System, or rTCS. Someone's phone's on. And again, we're pulling all this data. We've pulled it all together. And first we match it, right? So we have data from all these different databases. Sometimes there's a first name. Sometimes there's a last name. Sometimes there's an email. Sometimes there's a phone number. And through technology, we pull it together and we do what's called an identity match. So we can see Jay has what we know. She's in all these databases. And this is kind of the information summary we have about. That's what's our match. So we break down data silos, we pull it all together. Now, of course, there's gaps in that data. So how do we go collect that data? We have an application called rCapture, and we send out foot soldiers. So the data is already preloaded, and they can say, go to this plot number, tell us what you see, who's owning the property, who's being rented, what is going on. We're trying to fill in the gaps of the property. If we can't capture it via foot soldier, we have satellite imagery we've already downloaded. Every time I fly in here, there's more and more buildings coming up. Building is happening, but you got to capture that. So we're capturing that also through satellite imagery. So then we put all this in together in a map called rWaves. So when you pull up a map, think of Google Maps, you can see a house, you can click on it, you can see who's owning it, and is it rented or not? Are they paying taxes? And people were throwing a fit about this. URA will be able to see this. No one in the public is going to see this. But in America, you can pull up my address right now publicly. You can see what I paid for the house, what my property taxes have been for the last 10 years, what my water bill is, what my electricity bill, what schools are around, is it safe, what the crime report. That is an informed real estate market. Once we've analyzed it, and now we have all this data, now we're going to analyze it using artificial intelligence. And we'll be able to, this is all technology. No human is doing this. It'll go through and say, you know what? These properties over here by this owner, they're in the KCCA database. They're not in the URA database. We need to go, there's something wrong. It's a flag. And then the investigators will go out and investigate. They are armed with real data. Where do we store this for security? You guys have heard of blockchain. You've heard of blockchain probably in Bitcoin, the dark web. There's bad pieces, right? That's a cryptocurrency. It's becoming the latest, greatest thing. We use the cryptology side. So cryptology is it's very secure, and I'm actually going to walk you through blockchain. You're going to hear it about a lot. And at the end of the day, all this data, this technology, it shows up a nice dashboard, and it becomes the rental tax compliance system. Next slide, please. Okay, why blockchain? And I want to first off commend URA and the government. This is the first blockchain-enabled modern tax system ever built in the world. This is it. We just got awarded, I don't know if you know this, Fast Company just awarded URA and RippleNami Uganda world-changing ideas. So congratulations. Let's cheer for Uganda. We now have 7 countries behind Uganda in Africa that want to deploy this. So you guys are the first. I applaud you guys. It takes a village. We've gotten there. So let's talk about blockchain. So you can see the slides. Without blockchain, you see all these data, disparate data, right? Imagine it's URA, KCCA, water, sewage. And as you share data, you may send a file. You may send it via an API, automatic file. You may say it via Excel. So it's really disjointed, right? It's all over. It's not efficient. It's expensive, and it's vulnerable because you don't know what data is right or not. So with blockchain, think of it as a centralized database, but it's very secure. It's not hackable. And you put it in the middle. And if Minister of Land needs a piece of data, they can get that piece of data that's relative to them. It's permission-based. When URA needs it, they get a piece as well. And it's very secure at the moment. We always say that, and then someone hacks it, but no one can hack it yet. Last slide. So the results are we've designed and developed this system in conjunction with URA. It was very easy to use. It is in the process of being implemented. The whole goal is to collect all taxes due for land, property, and rental income, and we started with rental income. There's a great little brochure because I am now a TIN holder here as an individual, as is the company, about what is rental income tax. URA has a great little 2-page about a simplified guide. I suggest you guys get it so you understand how to do it. And we're here to help make life easy. We work hand in hand with the USAID implementers on tax policy, Nathan Associates. So together, the policy, the system, we're trying to pull it all together so it is seamless for the taxpayer because we know it is a burden. Any questions? No? There are. So we've pulled that data in from Minister of Lands, and then we start to verify. And we're like, wait, Jay, you own this property. This is your land. And I'm like, no, I sold it. And they're like, oh, who'd you sell it to? So it becomes then the investigation. You go from the chain. They've become very good at gathering that information now, but historically it is a problem.
Will this thing also lead to proper utilization of the property titles and
Yes.
correcting the property titles in this country?
Correct. It is a mess, and it does. It leads to that. So meeting with His Excellency, he really wanted to put forth e-government. And if you look at the best e-governments out there, it's Estonia. They're 100% on blockchain. Everything done is electronically, and they did it because Russia was trying to hack them 12 years ago. So they're the prime example of how e-government works, but you have to start with something. So we started with rental income because it's the low-hanging fruit. 8% is only being collected. If we can increase tax revenue, pay for some of the burden, not collect a debt or not add up debt, and start to solve a problem and bring light to the real estate market here, it's a win-win. Does that make sense? You got to start somewhere. And everybody kept saying, well, the data's wrong, but we got to start somewhere. So this is where we started. Yes, ma'am? So that's the Minister of Land right now. We'll point that out to them, but there's nothing we can do at this moment. We are focused on rental income taxation compliance. We will feed that back to them. We'll say, look, this is a gap. Because remember, we're pulling down satellite imagery. We pull down KCCA, URA, everybody's image comes together, and we can see if there's a gap and say, wait, you're not in any database. We'll feed that back to you. Any other questions? No? Okay. I will turn it over back to, yes, sorry. Only one? You know what it was? I think at the beginning there was fear, because anytime you implement a new system, there's fear. And like, what's going to happen to me? Is my job going to go away? Maybe people don't understand it, or my tax is going to go up. None of that. We've heard like, oh, my rental income, my rent is going to go up. Not the case. These laws have been on the books for a long time. All we're doing is enforcing the law. So the biggest hurdle had been fear, and getting everybody on all the MDAs on board to share their data, because it has to be secure. There are many big data privacy issues, as we know, and we have to apply and comply with every single one of them. And that's why we use blockchain. It is the most secure way to store data. Yes, they have. Yes, they have. Yes, ma'am. Right here.
Considering the fact that some of the people putting up these rental houses are people employed like me and you, who are taxed, and they use part of their saving to put up these houses. Sometimes they go for loans from the bank with huge interests. And after you've completed the house, the taxman wants the tax as well. And the materials you use to put up the house are also taxed. So that's why people are sharing away. Or you are taxed all through, and they're like saying, now I'm trying to get something out of this saving, and the taxman still wants money. I think that's why we are getting 8%. We should look at if they go through with their data exercise, can you put down those taxes? Or can we look at people who have been paying taxes and they have put up these houses? Can they have a different rate of tax payment? Thank you.
Thank you. It's true. If you're working and you set aside a business of a property, investing in a property, now that is a different income from what you are being taxed for from wherever you're working. So what happens is that we look at that specific income, and there's a specific rate for that for the tax we get from that income. There are some provisions that have been provided for in terms of expenses, to cater for the expenses you have incurred. There are some allowable deductions before we actually tax you. And so some few years back, there was even introduced a policy measure which allowed for us to allow the interest that you incur on the mortgages that you get to do that. Then you find at the end of the day, the amount we eventually tax is after considerations of some key items, as I'll explain to you later. The figure is not the gross rental income that you have got. It is the net after those allowable deductions. Yeah.
One of the things that we have heard is there's confusion between KCCA collects some rental income tax, URA does property tax, right? There's all kinds of different confusion. So one of the things that we're doing in conjunction with Nathan Associates, with our marketing guys, is educating, right? Because it's about tax planning. We work with lawyers, we work with the auditors. We actually have Deloitte, the tax planning will be up here on stage with us. But before you buy a property, you need to know what you're getting into. And I think there's a lot of misconception of, I'm gonna buy and make a lot of money. Well, there's also a tax obligation, so you gotta plan accordingly. And that's what, when we've asked both the owners and the renters and the tax people, is that it's really education and understanding. Because when you break it all down, it's not that, it's nothing different than what the US does, what British does. It's nothing different. It's just a proper planning, I think, on the front end, and understanding what you're getting into before you buy property, because it is expensive. But then eventually, long term, it will yield.
Should you be sensitizing the public on what you just mentioned? Because it's very important for the public, the general public, to understand how this taxation works or is going to work in the future. A. B, the biggest problem that the government and the URA faces is the undeclared income that is invested into the properties. Now, people with a lot of this undeclared income are going to have problems.
Yes.
And this is where there will be a lot of resentment and resistance to this entire act. So a lot of people will come out and say, I have $1 million. Where did this $1 million come? Don't ask me. But unfortunately, URA is going to ask you that.
Sure.
So things are going to really revolutionize in this field, because there is a fair amount of money that the government can collect.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And we're going to transition to the next phase. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jay. And our dear participants, thank you. At some point, I thought we had already gone into the real gist of the matter. You are so passionate about it, so I would like to suggest that right away, we go into the real discussion where we shall have all those questions answered. At this moment, I would like to invite our panelists to take their seats, starting with Petronella. Petronella is the Associate Director in charge of tax at Deloitte, Uganda. You're most welcome, Petronella. Thank you for honoring our invitation. I think you should take the third seat. Thank you. We are so glad to have you here. The next panelist here is a good friend of mine, James Odong from URA, the Acting Commissioner Domestic Taxes. Please take your seat, sir. You're most welcome. And URA has been a great ally, by the way, for the American Chamber of Commerce. Last year, when they rolled into AFRIS, they gave us all the time to help our members on board. So URA, thank you very much for that. We are so grateful. I would also like to invite our next panelist. James, take the second one. Leave that one for, oh, you want your, okay, all right. That is very, that is very strategic. So yes, in that way. Thank you. KCCA, I don't see yours. So, oh, you're here. Okay, good. Right. So I would like to invite Norbert Seruwaji, the Manager Compliance and Inspectorate at KCCA. You're most welcome, sir. Yeah. And of course, our moderator, the President of the American Chamber of Commerce, Mike Davis. Somebody recently said he's more Ugandan than American. So take your seats and let's begin.
Who's the middle one? Jay, would you come up, please? Thank you, guys. As you noticed from the commentary, people are very passionate about URA, and I would like to reinforce that any questions should go through Anne, please, so that we can kind of help facilitate that. And we know URA has been a good partner with us, as Anne mentioned, with EFRIS. They've been very helpful with that. So I kind of just wanted to start out from James. What is a fair and equitable taxation, and why is it important for the country?
Okay. Thank you. With a fair and equitable taxation system, we are looking at a system that is going to have a fair taxation of a spectrum of entities or individuals, taxed fairly in terms of the rates that are applicable and commensurate to the amount of revenue that is incurred. We are looking at what we could refer to as a vertical equity and horizontal equity. Vertical is from the low income earners up to the top income earners. Then horizontal for those who are within a same level of income earnings. Now, the most important thing is to ensure that we tax each and every person fairly within what that person is earning. And that is something that we want to do transparently. How is it important for Uganda? It's very important for Uganda because we have to ensure compliance to taxation increases. This is something that can encourage one to voluntarily comply. And with voluntary compliance, we are looking at raising revenue for the country. The target, of course, for the country is to become independent in terms of funding its own budget and everything without relying on the donors. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned really quickly, it's based on the amount of revenue earned. Why isn't it based on profit? Because if I invest, I spend money. And so how come it's not based on profit instead of revenue? I mean, yeah, profit instead of revenue.
Because at the end of the day, we are looking at the revenues that are expected by the government.
Yeah, but from a private sector side, shouldn't it be based on our profit, not our revenue?
Yeah, ideally, it's based on the profit. The tax is based on what the private entities earn as a profit. Okay. Yeah.
So as the victim, I would call it, of past corrupt activities by URA, wouldn't it be wise to have all URA employees and all URA officials declare all of their assets to have a very transparent system, because there's been a lot of corrupt activities? I know many people in the audience will say that too.
Yes.
So why wouldn't it be easy for the URA and URA officials to declare all assets amongst all of their individuals in order to say, hey, we are not corrupt, we have not been taking money, and here's what we own?
Yes, yes. Actually, we do declare.
But publicly.
Well, that information is available with IGG. Anybody who wants to know what I own can get that information from the IGG's office, because every 2 years we declare what has added on and so on and so forth. So that is in place to encourage transparency within the organization. And besides that, now we even have a compliance unit that is dedicated to monitor the staff affairs. That unit is there for transparency purposes. And anyone who has information can give that information to that unit, which investigates. And if they find out anybody is owning beyond what he's supposed to own, and that person is taken on.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I know this is a question that was asked before amongst our members previously, as well as in our in preparation for this. Jay, what is rental tax and who's liable? I mean, you mentioned it earlier, but who is liable for it?
What do you mean by liable?
Who has to pay this tax?
So rental homeowners, the owners. So we rent a house. Our landlord is subject to rental income tax.
Okay.
It's the same in the States, same exact thing. It's a separate schedule on your annual tax returns. And I wanted to add into your compliance thing, the rental tax system does not discriminate. Everybody will be liable, right? So that is, the onus is on the landlord. It's the law. It has always been the law. There are a lot of people that don't pay it, and there hasn't been a focus on it. So now we're focusing on it.
Great. Thank you so much. Petronella, what's the difference between an individual taxpayer and a corporate taxpayer with regards to rental tax? Because isn't there a difference?
So there is. The tax system does distinguish in terms of how an individual is going to be taxed for rental income tax purposes and how a corporate or a legal person will be taxed. So if you're an individual who has earned rental income, the law provides for a specific percentage that will be taken into account as your expenses. So currently it's 20%. So if I earn 10 million Uganda shillings for the year as rental income, the law then comes in and says, as an individual, you're allowed 20% of that 10 million as your expenses. So which means you then have a profit, and we're discussing revenue versus profit. So you have a profit of 8 million. Then the law comes in and indicates that, so there is individuals are taxed in a certain way. There's an amount that is non-taxable. That's about 2.8 million per year. That's a threshold above which, below which you're not taxed. But anything above that 2.8 million will be taxable. That's for an individual. Now, maybe something important to mention is that there are changes that are coming in, tax changes, that propose to change that percentage that's allowed to you as deductible expenses. The original bills had 60%. The acts that the parliament did debate and, let's say, approve has a 75%. So that's good news for individuals, because from 20%, if that is assented to by the president, that means you now have 75%. Now, when we move to a legal person, a corporate person, it's taxed differently. So again, the law takes your income, what revenue you've earned from rental property, and then allows you deduction for your expenses, that you have expenses in the production of that income. So again, you're not being taxed on the top line. So the rental income you've earned, you're being taxed on the profit, having taken into account any expenses, and that's at a rate of 30%.
Can we put it very simply? If you had $100 in revenue and you're an individual and you have the maximum allowable expense, what money do you get at the end of the year?
So $100 individual, you actually won't get taxed. If all you get
No, assume that it's beyond the threshold.
Yeah, so it's beyond the threshold. So because individuals do have a scheduler system, so there's an amount. So between 2.8 million rental income is taxed.
Okay, hold on. Let's ignore the threshold.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make it easy from a percentage standpoint. So let's say you have $100 you bring in revenue. the percentage is the allowable expenses is 20%, right?
Yeah.
So that means you have $80 and then you're taxed on $80 by what, 30%?
It won't be 30%.
So you get $80 in your pocket.
No, it's not $80. So you start out because of the scheduler system for an individual. So it's not going to be 30%. So while the top rate will be 30%, it is a cascade. So between a certain amount,
Of course, I'm saying ignore the threshold and you go top. So 30% is your top line, your maximum.
Yes.
Okay, so
maximum.
then out of pocket, you will basically be getting $56, 56% of your revenue back, top line.
Top line, yes.
Okay, as a corporation, what is that difference?
As a corporation, you could end up in a loss position because, or you could have,
So it's better to be an individual rental tax holder than it is to be a corporate tax holder.
Not necessarily, Jay. Sorry, not necessarily. And I will explain this a little bit. Because as an individual, and a lot of people I've had discussions with, always assume that it's better to, register a corporate entity and actually, not pay tax because all your expenses, if you can support them, are deductible. But that's not necessarily the case. Because as an individual, some people don't even know that they don't have a tax liability because they're running away from paying the tax anyway. They haven't educated themselves to know that while I may have rental income and I may have what is called chargeable income, because of the way I'm taxed as an individual, I may end up not paying anything at all or very little. While as a corporate entity, the moment I have chargeable income, I have the 30%. So if I take into account my expenses, and if we take the way rental is, so maybe the first couple of years, because I have, I took out a loan, I have all these capital allowances, I may not have to pay rental tax. But as the years progress,
I think what I'm asking is, what is the maximum deductible for a corporation?
It can be, the maximum can be, there's no limit to that because it all comes down to what are your actual expenses.
Okay, but what is the maximum?
Income.
There's no maximum. Okay. So it's better to have a corporation, or it's better to have a corporation because you can just write off all the expenses. If you can prove
if you can prove them.
Okay.
If you can prove them. Documentation is
Of course,
important.
yeah, everything has to
Yeah.
be proved. That's understood. So one of the things I wanted to ask about, this is where we were, Jay and I had a meeting with the U.S. ambassador yesterday, and we were discussing the disparities or the differences between the different laws and how things work. One of the key laws here that is being taken into consideration by large families is forced inheritance. So as an individual, the Ugandan law says that legitimate and illegitimate children have rights to properties in the same fashion. So if you're registered as an individual, then your property that you had willed to your legitimate children may be overridden and given to your illegitimate children. So how does that impact this kind of discussion? Because there's a disparity there, because so people are putting stuff in corporations because they want to protect their assets. Is there discussions on that happening within the Ministry of Finance, within Parliament? No? Okay. All right. The next thing we kind of wanted to talk about is KCCA. What's the difference between rental tax, ground rent, property rates, the whole myriad of fees and systems you have to pay to make owning a property worth it?
Okay, thank you so much. I would like to begin by describing what ground rent means in regard to KCCA. Ground rent is a nominal annual fee that an occupant of a leased land pays to the landlord. And in respect of KCCA, if you occupy KCCA owned land, it is a lease issued by the Kampala District Land Board. So annually you are supposed to pay a nominal fee, which is referred to as ground rent to KCCA. But in the city, we also have other landlords who also issue out leases which are not for KCCA. For example, we have the Buganda Land Board for the Kabaka. They also issue leases. So an occupant of land owned by Buganda Land Board also pays ground rent to Buganda Land Board. We also have land that is owned by the church, the Catholic Church, Kampala Diocese. They also issue out leases, so they also collect ground rent. We have land owned by the Church of Uganda and also the Muslim community. So ground rent is rent paid to landlord by the occupant of land that is leased out. Now, when it comes to property rates is a tax on the value of a property owned within the city. And it is legislated by the Local Government Rating Act, collected by KCCA. Now, KCCA is not a local government, but it is mandated to use the Local Government Rating Act to collect property rates using Section 78 of the KCCA Act of 2010. That's how KCCA comes in. Otherwise, this property rates is a local government tax on property, and it is based on the value of the property.
Can I comment really quickly? For those of you who don't know, in America, we pay the same thing. Just as a fair warning, it's not a different tax, but we pay the exact same thing in America. So.
Then the other one is the income tax. Rental income tax is, URA has already explained what it is. And it is a tax on rental income earned from a property.
Great, thank you so much. Now, Petronella, how do you advise your clients? Like, obviously the very easy answer is just pay your tax and do, declare everything and pay your tax. But how would you advise them, especially as corporations, property owners who want to invest in this industry?
Okay. I'll start out by saying that, 100% of our clients are compliant. That's so, but I think, if we have a walk-in, someone who comes in and says, I have a property, I'm earning rental income, how do you advise them in that case? I think we need to go back first to some of the factors that have contributed to non-compliance. Things like the attitude people have. If people think, if I pay tax, it's not going to do anything, it doesn't benefit me, then the likelihood that they'll comply is quite limited. If people are not aware of what their obligations are, and just having these discussions about rental tax and the mix up between, my corporate, do I pay 30%, do I pay the tax as an individual? If people aren't aware of their obligations, then they are likely not to comply. Then if people think they have an opportunity not to comply, they will take it. Rental tax is a self-assessment tax. You assess yourself and then, make payment. That's how it works. And if I think I don't, if I have money in my pocket now, why pay it over to the taxman? So you need to start out from that perspective. Now, if it's a person who's simply not aware, advice is to them, get to understand what rental tax is, what category you fall under. Are you taxed as, do you own it as an individual, or have you created a company that then owns that property, so that you're aware? Two, documentation. We talked about how a corporate entity, can possibly not pay any taxes on the basis of expenses, but you need to know what those expenses are in the first place. A lot of people will put up construction and they don't even know how much they're spending. So, I as an individual who's employed, I know maybe corporates have may not pay rental tax at all. I register a company, I put my property in that company, I spend money because I'm employed somewhere, so I have my employment income that I'm using to do the construction or put in, but I have no idea necessarily what I've put in. I may have a ballpark figure, but I have no idea. So again, the advice is know what your actual expenses are, have documentation to support that, because when the taxman does come, and it's not a question of if anymore, it's now a when, you know, you're going to have these conversations. And how are you going to be able to support the what you think should be your liability? Then, right, so that also goes to get in front of this. So as we are having this discussion this morning, it is only a matter of time before you start to see that bill coming, you know, where you have a liability for rental tax that you have not paid. So get in front of it. Right now, the URA has the voluntary disclosure program. So determine what your tax liability is, go and confess your sins, and, you know, then you won't pay the penalties and interest related to that. All you pay is the principal tax that you should have paid in the first place.
I think one of the, from my interactions with many of our members as well as many people in the community, the first thing that when I mentioned URA is the word harassment comes by. So if you declare, then what happens? 10 levels of harassment. So as an American, I pay my taxes. I'm trying to be as compliant as I can. I have received zero audits, zero compliance issues from the American government. In Uganda, I volunteer my time for the AmCham. Yet I receive complaints from URA saying, well, you're an American. Why aren't you getting paid to be on the board? I'm like, well, we're a volunteer. Well, but you should be paid. We need payee from that. And I mean, I don't know how many tax compliance issues I've had in the last year. I mean, I think we just had one with one of our former board members. So how can we work better with our members and URA and the community in general to slow down the harassment level? Because I know the first thing you do is when you declare, they come back, or it comes back and says, well, we have to have an audit on site and show me this. Like, I've never had that anywhere else in the world. I mean, I've
just
lived
suspend your
in
video. I see a
10
black
countries,
screen,
and I've never experienced that
but I
except for
don't
in
see
Uganda.
yours.
So how can we work with you as private sector, as AmCham, to want people to declare, but also not get them to be harassed so often? I think I get an audit every 2 weeks, roughly, from the different companies I'm involved with, or I get a non-compliance certificate as a director, probably every month and a half. So how can we avoid that? How can we help you with that and help URA understand what's going on, to be more compliant, to become less harassed? Because that's the first word people come to when they hear URA is, oh man, they're going to harass me. They're going to be in my office. They're going to do an audit again. And then you have 5 audits because you have a payee audit, you have an income tax audit, so how can we help you with that to make that smooth? Because that's in my opinion, that's the main reason for non-compliance is you get on the radar. James?
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I'm not happy with the word harassment because we are not out there to harass anyone. But what I have to say is that we are now looking at focusing on the use of data in terms of following up with the compliance of taxpayers. And it's now an opportunity that we are partnering with RippleNami to enhance our capacity to use the data that we are going to source from all the MDAs that collect data about specific taxpayers in terms of what they are earning from the various properties they own. That is a plus, and going forward, that is going to enhance our capabilities in terms of assessing the right tax. But on the side of the taxpayers, of course, we run a self-assessment regime. So it is important for the taxpayer to be as transparent as possible in terms of the declarations they make. And with the introduction of the electronic fiscal receipting and invoicing solution, of course, that is also a step in that direction, because now going forward, if you make declarations and you show your expenses based on that electronic invoice, there is no way we are going to doubt that this is a genuine invoice or not. So we shall be able to offer the service with the data that we have, and I'm very sure we are going to reduce or actually even to remove the harassment completely if it is there.
Great. Thank you so much. Um, Jay, I mean, you've been in many countries and implemented systems like this. In my opinion, the average Ugandan is going to suffer from this because they're going to be because the landlord is going to it's a trickle down effect. If they have to pay more taxes, the tenant's going to pay more taxes. Therefore, the average Ugandan is going to pay more for their rent. Um, how do you see this in other countries? How do you see this work in terms of that? So the average Ugandan, we'll say, pay 100,000 shillings a month for their rent. Now they're going to have to pay more. Is that true, or how would that impact it?
I don't think that's true. If it is, you have a choice. There's plenty of buildings around. Move to the next one, right? So I think that was a daily monitor, a chimp report, right? The scare tactic. RippleNami's coming. Your rental rent's going up. That's not the case. It's about compliance. I know our landlord, who lives right next door, we made her make sure that she's paying her taxes because we don't want to get audited. And we told her, it's important. So it's up to you as the renter to ensure that you have a good contract, that they're paying their taxes. They can't put it down and push it down to you. But there are choices. Look, rents go up and down all day long. And you as an informed renter need to know what is right and wrong. And there is games out there where they'll give you a receipt and saying, I know you paid 100,000, but I'm going to give you one for 50,000. That's not okay. So it's up to you as the renter to make sure that you're doing everything you need to do. And there's a compliance hotline. Call on them.
Great, thank you. Now, in terms of investment, obviously American investment and our members' investment in the country keeps growing. As an investor in real estate myself, I look at the rate of return. In America, I'm looking at a 6 to 7 year rate of return for real estate investment. That's on a cash basis. Here in Uganda, before this rental tax, it's about 11 year rate of return. Now, doing calculations with the changes in rental tax, it's about a 15-year rate of return. So, I mean, I guess, for Petronella, why would you invest in real estate anymore? Why would you build anything in Uganda anymore if you have a 15-year rate of return? That's tax basis. Cash, no loans, tax basis.
So, looking at what you've just outlined, it does look grim, and a lot of people wouldn't then invest in that. And if we are looking at foreign investment, that's probably something that they do look at closely. If we do look at individuals who live in Uganda, however, real estate is still considered to be, let's say, the safest way for people to invest their money. We are not as, we don't have many investment opportunities in that respect. So for a lot of people, real estate is still very much a way of investing. But hopefully with what Jay outlined, that over time, as the information gets collected and it's readily available to individuals, then people start to identify the real value of properties, the areas where investment can be made, so people can make better investment decisions in respect to just rental properties and all. So I think over time, it is going to take time. And right now, it doesn't look like it's the best idea, everything being taken into consideration. But I think hopefully we are starting to move in the right direction. And 10 years from now, or probably less, hopefully, 5 years from now, we can have a different discussion and those numbers won't look as bad.
Great, thank you. All right, I think that's all of my questions for now. I would like to give every panelist opportunity to say some last words, if you don't mind. James?
Okay, thank you very, very much. When you are giving your opening remarks, you talked about why not harmonize 18 so that we bring on board as many people as possible. Probably what I could say, going forward as URA, we are focusing on enhancing the national identification number to use it as our TIN, as well as the business registration number. Those are the plans we have in the offing. And with the new leadership in NIRA, we hope this is going to move smoothly as we have planned. Because we look at the social security number in the US as something that we can benchmark from, so that somebody can be looked at from the time you are born up to the time you start earning your income. So those are the strategic plans we have in place. And just to add on, a lot has been mentioned about taxpayer education. A lot of our resources are being invested in educating taxpayers about each and every aspect of taxation that we are handling, rental income specifically. We have circulated some pamphlets which are specific on rental income. If you don't mind, you can pick them as you go out. That will also enhance your information, but we are also using various means of reaching out to the people. For example, we are soon going to introduce what we call the mobile buses. We have procured 2 buses, and we are soon to get more 2 buses with the assistance of USAID. These buses are going to move our offices to as many areas as possible to engage the people about taxes, to facilitate them in terms of taxpayer obligation. So we hope going forward, as many as the number of taxpayers that are out there potential, we shall be able to reach out to them. We are setting our targets to raising that figure to around at least 5 million within the next 3-4 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think mine is also related to taxpayer education. There are a lot of misconceptions about rental tax, and even with our corporate clients, people, it's something that isn't very clear for people. So I think URA has quite a lot of work to do to educate taxpayers, but I think as advisors as well, we have a lot to do in that space. Having said that, as the system gets rolled out, I think URA should be a bit more indulgent and just, at least in the first couple of maybe years, or as they roll out the system and people start to realize the obligation, just be more, yes. and work with taxpayers to get them to a level of compliance that they would like, and then it's a win-win for everyone. So that's
Thank you. I think you said it perfectly earlier when I asked, should you be an individual or corporate and what's the tax rate? I still don't have a clear answer. And that's the problem. There's not a clear answer. And it should be not a 15-page, 50-page URA document. It should be something I can forward in WhatsApp and say, individuals pay this, corporate pay this, done. But I think that's where there's a missing gap as well. Well, no, look, it's a booklet. I'm talking a WhatsApp message with an image that says, here's what you pay. But that's that's where I believe we need to get to, and I agree with you. So.
So there are proposed amendments that should be coming through, and the tax rate is going to be 30% for both individuals and corporates. So I guess right direction again, simplified system,
yeah.
Same rate for everyone.
Exactly. Can we skip Jay? Can we skip you first? And then.
Yeah. From KCCA, I cannot conclude without talking about the achievements of KCCA in areas of property tax. KCCA has built a database, an updated database, geo-referenced. We have collected data on property in the city, and this is geo-referenced, which was not the case before. We know where these properties are located. Now, why I emphasize properties, because property tax is the future for our financing as KCCA because it is the biggest source of revenue. It contributes the biggest percentage, and it's more reliable. So we are relying on data that we are collecting, and when I see such initiatives like URA together with KCCA and other government players, is a very good development because at the end of the day, like they have already said, it is information sharing that provides relevant information and data. So with KCCA, we have progressed, and the future is that we are also planning to integrate with the land information system. It's work in progress, and also integrating with the development control, the physical planning department. So those are the initiatives that we are pursuing, and we expect that once that is achieved, then we shall have a reliable source of revenue that will support uh, the infrastructure and maintain the infrastructure, and also support other social services that we are mandated to provide to the citizens of this country. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Jay?
My conclusion is, look, we started here in October. I will tell you, we started negotiating and talking about this system 4 years ago. The URA, the KCCA that I worked with 4 years ago is not the same group as it today. There is integrity with the Commissioner General, and it trickles down. If you have problems, use your voice. You're the taxpayers. They work for you. We do it in America. Anytime we don't like it, we recall a governor. We do a lot of things, right? So we use our voice. And I have talked to a lot of people out there. It is an education process. And I sat down with Norbert. I'm like, let's whiteboard this. I need to understand what you guys do and what your taxes. So I took it as a citizen. I sat down with Petronella. I'm like, what are my obligations? It was up to me to educate myself with the laws as a citizen or as a foreign investor here. And now I have a TIN number. I met with the new NERA executive director yesterday. She's tough, but she is direct, and she is all about sharing data. And that's one of the things that URA, we've all been waiting on. So everything will tie to your national ID, as everything to us in the US ties to our social security number. So it's all about its progress. It is painful at sometimes, but you have to move forward, and that's what we're trying to do. So any questions, educate yourself. We're all here. We have a big team, these two tables right here and a table over there. We're here to answer questions. We're here to get your, whatever your concerns on, so we need to hear it because it's a two-party conversation. But I appreciate you guys coming here, and I know it's a sensitive topic. That's why we're talking about it. You got to talk about it. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I know we do have some other questions from the audience, but they're more focused on the URA aspect of EFRIS, et cetera. I'd ask that everybody has an individual conversation regarding that, since the focus here is on rental tax. You know, obviously with the many things that URA does. You know, I know that it would be great to have you guys back for a more of a comprehensive discussion from the chamber side with the chamber members about all the different things. And then also have that a very clear discussion, knowing that there is anger, I guess, amongst the general population regarding URA, and how to mitigate that anger and how to help URA have a better positive experience with our members, and then work together. I know that AmCham has been, well, we formally were working with the CG, the previous CG, on doing a MOU with AmCham to how do our members engage. I think that's another conversation we want to get into, is how do we continue to engage in the right way, so that we are putting out a positive message for our engagement with you, as well as your engagement with us. And then hopefully over time, the harassment levels will slow down. Well, as I said, even the American Chamber gets harassed by AmCham. I mean, by the URA. So, so we want to work on that. I think that's another conversation for another time. So, thank you guys very much. Yep. hold on. Oh, okay. So here's actually a very valid question, and this kind of also goes into the URA's system of VAT and collections. What happens if the tenant has not paid rent for several months due to COVID? People can't pay taxes on rent that has not been received. I know I see many people engineer ways to make that work, but what's the appropriate way? So my tenant cannot pay. Or in another way, the government of Uganda doesn't pay their contractors on time, but URA requires us to pay the VAT and withholding tax right away. How does that work? How can we work with rental tax systems to mitigate the financial liability that's on the landlord, even though they have not been paid, but they have invoiced?
Well, that is something that we handle on a case-by-case basis. If someone comes and tells us that I have this liability that I cannot pay down, we have options. For example, we can allow you to pay in installments. And that is something that we sign an MOU with you to agree on how you are planning to pay the liability. So once you come and engage us, we give installments up to 12 installments that are provided for by the Commissioner General. So that is something that we can handle with a taxpayer on a case-by-case basis.
I think one of the key things is public relations regarding this.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I received a non-tax compliance alert and warning about my accounts will be frozen because I issued to the government, for example, an invoice 90 days ago, and the government has not paid because, well, Ministry of Finance doesn't have money right now. Yet URA is demanding money from me, even though the government hasn't paid. How from a public relations standpoint, create a better workflow which will allow, I call it harassment, but you call it compliance, to make that work, because the tenant or the client has not paid, and I don't know when they're going to pay. So even though I'll sign an MOU, I have 4 MOUs with you guys. How can we mitigate that or create a different system to not force the MOU on me and put my personal property at risk when the problem is not me, it's the tenant, or, well, in this case, the government?
No, if it is actually even with the government specifically, if we know, for example, it is Minister of Finance, at that level, we can even engage the Minister of Finance about that, and we sort of try to trigger them to ensure that they pay you as early as possible. But it's an issue of negotiation with the taxpayer, and we have an agreeable position which we can follow in terms of recovery of the tax liability.
So wouldn't it be to the advantage of the private sector to just not issue invoices and wait till they get paid? Because right, I have not got my money, therefore, but you're requiring money from me. So wouldn't it be to our advantage just to not issue invoices?
I wouldn't want to comment, and it would be, and you take my word that I said that is the position you should take. No, but what I would advise is for you to follow what is appropriate. And if the liability is there, come and negotiate, and we agree on what we can follow up in terms of engaging you in the future. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. So sorry to press you a little bit, but I'm speaking on behalf of many members, and we see that happen all the time. So, all right, well, thank you guys. We really appreciate it. Thank you, RippleNami, all of our friends from URA, everyone around, especially our President's Club members who I see in the audience, as well as all of our members. Thank you guys for coming back. I know this is our first CEO breakfast in a long time. It's been well over a year. It's great to see everybody again. I hope you all are vaccinated. Go get vaccinated. If you haven't, it's very easy. There's typically no lines. Haruna, you did it last week. How long was it? 10 minutes? You go. It's very easy. So please go get vaccinated. It's very easy. It's free. If they try to shake you down for money, there's a compliance hotline. You call Ministry of Health and they will come and report. Trust me. It's no joke. Get vaccinated, please. So thank you guys. I'll hand it over to Anne as final comments.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you to all our panelists. It has been a great, great discussion. We really, really appreciate that you have taken us through the entire process, and I believe that everybody now understands taxation, what needs to be done. In case you have any further questions, please feel free to send to us, and we shall send to our panelists, and they will still respond. URA, we are always on back and forth a lot of times with James. So if any of our members has issues, please let us know and we shall reach out to URA. KCCA, of course, we do speak with them. And Deloitte, we are yet waiting for them to join the chamber as members. So thank you once again. Our audience that joined from online, there are some materials that we shared with you. Please download them. There's a rental brochure and taxation handbook. You can download this. You can even get them on URA website. Thank you for joining in. I hope you enjoyed your virtual breakfast for all those who are online. And our panelists, there is a media banner outside where you're all going to go for the interview, for the media interview. I would like to request our board members to come and have a photo with our great panelists before they go outside for the media interview. Meg, is that what you wanted to say? Okay. And our next event is next month, 24th of June. We shall be analyzing the budget for 2021, 2022. We shall be here, same time. Please make sure you come for that one as well. We look forward to seeing you. And Meg?
Just a quick comment. Hi, everybody. I'm Meg J. Quay. I'm the Vice Chair of the American Chamber of Commerce. As you know, every year at Thanksgiving is our big event. We're already starting to plan. So if you are interested in being a sponsor, please let us know. Keep the date in mind, November 19th, right here at Sheraton. Traditional turkey and all the fixins. So make sure you participate.
Thank you, Meg. Now we can have our Kodak moment, the way we used to do it those days. Where's Blair? Okay.